between keeping it light and keeping it dark there?
No, it doesn't light up the intersection. So they just threw it on a pole. It's too far away from the pole.
Got it. Okay.
And if anybody wants a street light, they can have the one out by my house. For free. When Coldwater got new
everyone.
They brought all the old ones out and put them in our subdivision. I was like, you can just take that away.
There we go. We're ready to go.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Begin with our land acknowledgement. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, in which the Township of Severn operates, is part of the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe. For thousands of years, Indigenous peoples have been inhabiting and caring for this land. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Ojibwe or Chippewas peoples. This territory is covered by Lake Simcoe Treaty 16 and the J. Collins land purchase. We are grateful to have had the opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, give our respect to its first inhabitants. We're going to have a moment of reflection. I just want to say that we'll think of all the ones that have passed before us, but I want to make reference to Rob Ferguson, who was a member of this council from 2010 to 2014. So however you reflect in your prayers as we take a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Councillor Taylor.
Yes, I have two. K6, the reason is one of the appointees is a family member, and K8, one of the appointees is a family member.
Thank you. Any other members of council? Madam Clerk, as part of the budget, there's budget in here. Do we need to declare again that I'm a member of the Lions Club in Oswego and also a member of the, I've forgotten, in Coldwater, the Legion in Coldwater. Do I need to declare it now? Or not?
If that's what you'd like to do, then that is your choice. But this would be the appropriate spot.
Okay, so I'll declare for both of those, please. Councillor Cox.
I need to declare for the Lions Club, the Legion, and the Oswego Art Club.
Any others? Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, just even though they are in the minutes, but I declare again the Quarter Mill and the Matchadash Community Heritage Center as well.
Thank you. Councillor Jansen?
Yeah, and I declare, I know there's some budgetary matters dealing with the BIA and the SEGBE, Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. Okay. We'll go to the consent agenda. Would anyone like anything pulled on the consent agenda? Sorry, I didn't see if there was anyone that, no one? Is this, we're going to do a budget later, correct? It's in the, yeah, it's in later. Okay. All right, seeing none, Madam Clerk, do you have a motion?
I do. So the motion reads that the agenda be adopted, including consent items, is circulated.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Cox, second by Councillor Brennan. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Correspondence, none. Reports from officials. We've already adopted the agenda, so reports from officials. First up is Planning and Development Planning Report P23003, proposed private telecommunications tower 3331 Telford Line. Any discussion? Good morning, Brad.
Good morning.
Do you want to say anything to it, Brad?
Yeah, I have a little bit here I'd like to say.
Thank you.
So good morning, Council. As you likely remember at the January Planning and Development Committee meeting, Muskoka Wi-Fi did make a delegation to committee with respect to a private telecommunications tower at 3331 Telford Line, and it was referred to staff for a report. So the site is located on the northeast corner of Stockdale Road and Telford Line. The applicant did advise the committee that this site was a high point and would allow for greater coverage. And despite this matter being before council and previously before committee, the proponent unfortunately already has installed this tower. When staff did become aware of this, we alerted Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, being ISED, who investigated and then directed the proponent to work with the municipality to address the standard protocol requirements. As the township does not have its own protocol, this just defaults to the standard ISED protocol. So in October of 2022, the proponent did send out mail notice to all property owners within a radius 3 times the height of the tower, and advertised in local newspapers and digital media. Following the closure of the public comment period, they then made a delegation to Planning and Development Committee in January, which has brought us to today's report. There was one letter of concern that was provided to the proponent as part of that public consultation period, and the applicant did discuss that with the committee last month. While the Township Council may have regard for the comments, ultimately these comments are to be considered by ISED as part of their approvals process. Telecommunication towers are federally regulated, so the township zoning bylaw really is only a suggestion for the location of these towers. However, I am happy to report that this tower would comply with all of the zoning provisions. Staff did encourage the applicant to consider co-location opportunities, as there is an existing telecommunications tower on the southeast corner of Stockdale and Telford. However, the applicant advised that that tower was at capacity and could not handle any additional infrastructure. So with that being said, township staff are supportive of the request for a letter of concurrence and have included a draft letter as attachment 4 to the staff report. I did also just want to point out that in the recommended motions, staff have encouraged the proponent to comply with the ISED protocol requirements should they propose any new towers within Severn in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Any Deputy Mayor Cox?
Through the chair, I realize that these towers are federally regulated, and I realize that everybody wants to have internet, but I do believe that the federal government should also take into consideration that there are some health risks to some people about these towers, and I know there's nothing we can do about it, but I would note that maybe the federal government should at least listen or look into this. We did have a complaint from a resident, and she does have issues, and we've had this happen before, and our hands are tied. We can't do anything because the federal government is the regulator. But I do think it's worthy of note that sometimes we all want internet so much that we forget that there are people who do have sensitivity to these things.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, through the mayor, to staff, to Brad, I guess. The one thing that keeps bugging me about this is the fact that it was put up ahead of time. And there seems to be no consequences whatsoever for that kind of behavior, which I think is inexcusable, frankly. And I'm wondering if we can't deal with it now, if as a township, we can't make sure there is a financial penalty that discourages that kind of thing in the future. I'd love some comments on that.
Brad?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to Councillor Brennan. The municipality only has our application fee established within the fees and charges bylaw. So there's no real financial penalty or an additional charge for this type of situation that could be applied. I understand the concern there and the comment, but unfortunately, this is the only fee that we have is just the standard application fee.
Thank you. Councillor Minnings.
Thank you. Through the chair. I'm having trouble just as an oversight with my video, so I'm not going to be able to be on video today. I also have a concern with the draft letter that the township has prepared as an approval, because like Councillor Brennan, it does not speak to the fact that this was put up in advance of coming to the council. And in fact, in the letter dated July 15th, 2022 by NAV, it clearly states to Mr. Holmes and his company that letter does not constitute any approvals that might be required by municipalities and the province. So I too, as during the presentation, feel that this going forward leaves us wide open for other people to have a series of towers across the township, which we absolutely need. But at this early stage, it needs to be tightly controlled. And I agree with Councillor Brennan. There needs to be a consequence, and it needs to be stated, I think, at a minimum in that letter too. Thank you.
Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Mayor Burkett. If I could just maybe add a couple of comments here with respect to the draft letter in response to the comments we've received so far. If council is open to this suggestion, we could modify the letter included as the attachment 4 in the staff report. We could add the concern about the early installation of the tower, just so that it's clear. As Mr. Oster did note, he alerted ISED early in the process, so they are certainly aware of our concern from a verbal perspective, but we could add it to the draft letter. And we could also add Deputy Mayor Cox's comment about, ongoing health concerns, and, that we would appreciate ISED taking those into account as part of their process as well.
Is council okay with that? Any further comments? Okay. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Well, council would be unaware of this. Staff are beginning to undertake a review of our user fees and service charges. And one thing we could do just from our side, it's probably the only thing we could do, and lots of municipalities do this from a building permit side, is we could make it so that if the tower goes up before the application comes in, so different than being caught building without a permit, their application fee, we could bring it forward that the application fee going forward would double. So there's a bit of a monetary penalty there, but that won't come forward till the spring when we bring forward the entirety of the fees and charges update. So.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councillor Brennan.
Oh, yeah, that's fantastic. It's a good start. I think we do need some sort of disincentive. I like the fact that it'll be mentioned in the letter. And I don't know, if this happens again, it's going to be awful hard to approve these things. There needs to be some respect for the process here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Madam Clerk, do you have a motion?
Unmute myself there. So the motion reads that planning report number P23-003 dated February 1st, 2023, with respect to a proposed private telecommunications tower at 3331 Telford Line be received, and further that the Township of Severn supports the proposal as presented in attachment 2 to staff report P23-003, and further that the Director of Planning Development be authorized to provide written municipal concurrence for the ISED application to give effect to the township endorsement in substantial conformity with attachment 4 to staff report P23-003. I'm going to put as amended. And further that the Council of the Township of Severn encourages the proponent to comply with the ISED protocol, including public notification prior to installation of private telecommunication towers in the future.
Thank you. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Taylor, second by Councillor Brennan. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to I 1.2, planning report number P23-004, letter from Minister Clark regarding adopted County of Simcoe official plan amendment number 7, phase 1 of the Municipal Comprehensive Review, MCR, and Environmental Registry of Ontario, ERO, posting 019-6113. Ms. Woodrow. Oh, Madam Clerk, did you want to say something first?
I believe we're waiting for Mr. Robinson to join us, who's actually in a Township of Tiny meeting right now on the exact same subject matter. So if we could maybe move to the next report, and when he joins us, we'll come back.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to I-1.3, Planning Report number P23005, request for an extension of draft plan of subdivision approval, West Shore Crescent Plan of Subdivision, SV-T 07062595 West Shore Crescent. Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Mayor Burkett. If I may share my screen just for a moment. Give an overview of this report. Mayor Burkett, are you able to see my screen share at this time?
I am, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the subject lands are located in the West Shore settlement area, which is to be the focus of growth per provincial, county, and township policies. The subject lands are a unique island property within the existing West Shore Crescent residential area, as shown on the screen. This is a bit of a historical development. The county is the approval authority for subdivisions in Severn at the present time. So in 2009, the county granted draft approval for 8 infill lots on the island property here, and subject to various conditions. And the conditions must be satisfied in order to create the lots. So the first approval was a 3-year approval, and it was subsequently extended over time for the developer with endorsement from the township and approval by the county. There's various reasons this development hasn't proceeded since 2009. It's small scale in nature, so depending on the developer's business model, it may not have been a priority at the time. We've also had changing real estate markets and that sort of thing. So I'm happy to report that we're very close. The developer has a new partner, and we've been working towards a draft subdivision agreement with the township solicitor, and the engineering plans are in their final stages of completion by the developer's engineer. So we're so close. However, it does expire. The draft approval expires on March 14th of this year, and that's getting very close. And in order to take into account any potential delays through the county approval process or at land registry office, that deadline could be missed. Excuse me. So in order to avoid putting the developer, the township, and the county in that position, the developer has requested a 1-year extension, which staff have discussed with our county representatives. There's no concerns there because there has been a lot of movement on the file over the last year. So at this point in time, I'm seeking direction from council to endorse the 1-year extension of the draft approval to the county so that they can make a final decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No questions? Everyone good with it? Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Sorry. It's.
Oh, sorry. Councilor Mennings, you must have frozen up.
Yeah, I'm going to stop again. Sorry. I do have one question because this is new that I saw the plan for me anyway. Can you tell me what the extension is for? Like, what will we see in the next year happening on this section of land?
Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Mayor Burkett, through you to Councillor Mennings. So the 1-year extension will provide an opportunity for the subdivision agreement to be finalized, and that is an agreement that does come back to council for approval to allow the clerk to execute. So you will be able to see the timing in which that occurs in the next year. And I can tell you the new partner in this development is very anxious to proceed. They did clear some trees last year in the appropriate environmental window, such that once they get their subdivision agreement and final approval and registration to create the 8 lots, they wish to break ground as soon as possible. So once you see the subdivision agreement come back to council, you'll have a better idea on timing and when they may break ground. But we anticipate the agreement being back before council within the next 3 to 6 months.
Thank you.
Thank you. And a supplemental question through the chair. The drawings for the proposed homes, the lots are fairly inconsistent in size for the most part, and it's a very narrow piece of land. I know you referred to it as an island. And because it's in the center of an existing subdivision, I've had lots of questions and interest from existing residents around that. So in your approvals, will you also be taking that into account, what type of residences will go on, or is that already something that's been determined?
Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Mayor Burkett. Through you to Councillor Minnings. Certainly, the developer has some preliminary renderings. However, they do have to conform to the township's zoning bylaw. So this property has, setbacks for distance from the road and from the side yards and that sort of thing, and a maximum building height, maximum lot coverage. So all of that's embedded in the township zoning bylaw, and we review that in detail at the building permit stage. So at this point in time, we wouldn't have any final drawings, but certainly what does come in has to conform to our zoning bylaw.
Thank you.
Or Councillor Minnings, is that okay? The response?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, Madam Clerk, do you have a motion?
Certainly. The motion reads that planning report number P23-005 dated February 1st, 2023, with respect to a request for a one-year extension of the draft plan of subdivision approval for 2595 West Shore Crescent, file number SVT 0706 be received. And further, that the Township of Severn endorses the one-year extension of the draft plan of subdivision approval, which is scheduled to lapse on March 14th, 2023. And further, that the County of Simcoe be advised of the Township's position on the extension.
Thank you. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Cox, second by Councillor Jansen. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on to corporate services, I 2.1, 2023 operating and capital budget budget revisions. So I think Mr. Plunkett may want to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning. I do know that I believe you have the pages with your binder, and I'm not sure if we can get them up on the screen, but I will let you know I did reduce the rate from the blended rate from 4.55% down to 3.9%. I did that by reducing our levy impact this year by $178,750. And what I did was I reduced the amount we were drawing from the levy to pay for roads capital. And even though I pulled it down 178,000, we have still increased the amount that we're drawing from the levy for roads capital in 2023. And significantly greater than we have been able to do in the past. So even with the $178,000 reduction, we are still further ahead than we would have been in other years. And that is, I guess, arguably a good news story. So even with the reduction to get us down to a 3.9% blended rate, we are still able to move forward with a greater levy draw for capital purposes for the roads infrastructure.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions, Council? I can't see everyone. If someone has a question, just oh, there we go. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you very much. Through the chair to Andrew. Thank you very much, Andrew. This is great news. Yesterday at the county, Mayor and I could vouch for the fact that we were hearing from other municipalities, and it's pretty bad out there sometimes. We heard from the mayor of Barrie, and their reserves will almost be nothing. People have drawn on reserves. Bradford Gress Billenberry's in the same position. They're having a really tough time with budgets, and anybody who's really low admitted that they have been taking from their reserves, and they're all getting very worried about this. Because if this goes on for 2 or 3 more years, there are municipalities that do not have a good backup of reserve like we do. So I am happy with this time, but we really will have to watch next year, because if it's the same type of year, which they're saying, we'll have to sharpen our pencils and try to keep it down as much as we can, but not drain our reserves. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other member of council like to speak? I think Councillor Brennan, did you want to speak to a street light? To see where Andrew's going to pull this money from?
Okay. Yeah, through the mayor to Andrew, I guess we're talking about moving a light to a more appropriate location. I think the argument from the locals is it's about safety, basically. Right. It's Wayman and Confederation. There's a light just there that's just not doing the job, and I think the mayor and myself are kind of hoping that we can make that accommodation for the residents in the area. It seems to be a fair argument on their part, and I don't know, unless you wanted to add something else, Mayor Burkett. I think it's as simple as that.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. So the light as it stands today was placed just on a hydro pole. It actually is useless where it's located. And with the amount of people that turn at that intersection, not to mention the people that are walking to turn into that intersection, and I did have a discussion this morning with Director Burke, it can be done. There is a cost associated to it. It's pretty intense because we have to hire someone to actually look at an intersection and how much it illuminates. I didn't realize that. So they show the different, and it's about $5,000, $5,000 to $7,000 for, I don't know if they're an engineer or a lighting consultant to actually do it. But Andrew, we're looking at about $30,000. Is there some way that we could incorporate it in the budget? So if council agrees with it, that it doesn't impact this 3.9% without, yes, I'll just leave it up to you. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, I would suggest if it cannot be covered in existing operating costs, which I'm assuming the $30,000 likely is not able to be, we can draw it from the capital reserve.
Councillor Taylor.
And just a question to the mayor, to Derek or whoever can answer. Who put the light up originally and who owns the light? But I'm all for safety. We had the same issue out in Featherton. So what's the history on this light in the first place?
Mr. Burke.
Thank you. Through the mayor, we don't actually have a record of installation of the initial lighting. However, we did replace all street lights in and around 2016 into 17, somewhere in there, with LED. So the head itself was about 5 to 6 years old, but there was no design, and the consultant that provided the township-wide streetlight replacement noted that there is varying compliance with the lighting standards, for the road authority, but it wasn't the municipality's intent at that time to upgrade. You could imagine that would be a significant undertaking. So, but the mayor is correct. There is some design work to have, and a baseline estimate for improving just the intersection illuminations around $30,000.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I certainly would support improving the lighting there for sure.
Thank you. So just to add for council's benefit, every year staff will come back and we will have a surplus. And I'm almost sure we're going to have a surplus again this year. Is that correct, Mr. Plunkett? Just an educated guess.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if that's a good educated guess for this year or not. This year has been certainly higher costs across the board. I still have my, accountants shouldn't really cross their fingers, but I have my fingers crossed we're still going to generate a surplus for 2022.
So if I may, and I'm not sure if we can do this, if council's in favor of repositioning this light and just giving our director the go ahead to do it, when you do bring a report back to council with the surplus, could we not just take the 30,000 out of that?
The 30,000, I would suggest, comes from the capital reserve, and we tend to send the entire surplus, with the exception of some smaller components, straight to the capital reserve. So that's exactly what would be happening anyways.
Just as long as council's fine. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Yeah, through the chair to Andrew or Derek, do we not have a streetlight budget to replace things and do stuff? A budget line?
Well, I'll maybe let Derek take one, but I'll jump in quickly. We do, but it's not necessarily for items like this. It's
capital. Okay.
Yeah, it's not necessarily capital related.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Everyone's okay and happy with the 3.9? Thank you, Mr. Plunkett. Good job. So I think, Madam Clerk, if some way you can add just the component about the street light at Wayman and Confederation.
Yes,
And then
I've made that note, Your Worship, so it'll show and reflect in the minutes.
Thank you. And then if there's no more discussion, oh, Mr. Plunkett.
Sorry, if I can, Mr. Mayor, just add, once we've had a chance to add all the changes to the budget sheets that we made and add some of those carry forward items, we'll redo all those budget sheets. And if you want to return your budget binders to me, I can replace all the changes, and so that you'll have all the updated information in your budget binders.
Thank you. So, Mr. Plunkett, the one where it showed the 4.5% and the impact for the year, you'll replace that page as well?
I will. So it'll show it that it will be down to 3.9.
Thank you. Any other questions, Council? Okay, Madam Clerk, do you have a motion?
Certainly. So the motion reads is that the 2023 operating and capital budget be adopted as amended, including the budgets for the Coldwater BIA and library, and further that any items for which a conflict has been declared or deemed not to have been voted on or discussed by the individuals making the declaration.
Thank you. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Cox, second by Councillor Jansen. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, and thank you, Andrew. Okay, do we move on to general bylaws, Madam Clerk, or is Mr. Robinson finished?
I believe he's joined us. There he
There
is.
Morning, Jimmy.
Good morning.
So we'll go back to the letter to the province that the Minister Clark sent to us. So I'll let you speak, Mr. Robinson. Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship and members of council, and thank you for your patience this morning. I was tied up with tiny council at 9 o'clock as well. So thanks for moving things along. The reason I'm here today is to speak to you about a piece of correspondence and seeking direction from council to provide a response to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. We're in a pretty unique time in the province, as many of you are aware, and the mayor received a letter from the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing on December 12th, asking council if they'd like to provide any additional comments on Official Plan Amendment 7, which was an official plan amendment from the County of Simcoe. So just setting the table for what this is all about is that the Official Plan Amendment 7 effectively is an official plan amendment that implements phase 1 of the County of Simcoe's growth management exercise. So that growth management exercise is referred to as a municipal comprehensive review. And what that phase 1 of the exercise did was it identified population and employment forecasts or allocations to each of the lower tier municipalities in the county. So the result for Severn Township, and what's important for you folks, is that that phase 1 identified that Severn Township had enough land within their settlement areas to accommodate the anticipated amount of residential growth that was allocated. However, there was a lack in terms of employment land, so there was a need to identify some additional employment lands. Now that's what phase 1 did. Phase 2 of the MCR, or the county's growth management exercise, was then to identify what settlement areas should expand and where should they expand. So in other municipalities that didn't have enough land designated to support future residential growth, they'd have to identify specifically which settlement area boundaries would expand, and then which lots would that expansion occur onto. So kind of what's unique right now is the province is reviewing the Official Plan Amendment 7 that implements that first phase. But the province has come back and said, we know phase 2 is coming. This is effectively what they've said. Trying to put it in layman's terms here, but they've said, we know phase 2 is coming, But if there's lands that you specifically want identified for settlement area expansion, tell us what those are and we'll consider them. So basically a potential avenue not to go through phase 2 of the MCR for those lands, but to bring additional settlement area lands on stream faster. And I can only estimate or guess why that's the case, is that we've seen a lot of provincial announcements recently related to, for example, Bill 23, more homes faster, as the province is looking at ways to bring housing on stream faster. So from Severn's perspective, we threw around a couple ideas. Was one, do we identify some specific settlement area lands right now that we think these settlement areas could expand to from a residential perspective without undertaking any study or determining what land's more appropriate over another? Or do we take a two-step approach where we open the door, so to speak, to say to the province, yes, we're interested in some additional growth. However, we haven't done any work yet to identify which lands should be priority over other lands. And we think it's appropriate and in public interest and in our township interest to do that work first, so that we can determine that we're appropriately servicing land and that everything down the future will that it proceeds sort of in order, and there's no additional expenses to the municipality beyond what might otherwise be anticipated. So what our recommendation as staff is to respond to the ministry with a letter that opens the door and says, yes, we would like additional lands. And the basis for that is that our building permit data in the municipality is demonstrating that there's higher rates of growth than what has historically occurred in the municipality, and higher rates of growth than what the allocation numbers would dictate. So we're actually seeing more growth in the province and what the county had anticipated. So we think there is justification for additional settlement area land, but we haven't done the exercise yet to determine where the best location for that is. So I think, so the purpose of the letter would be to say, province, yes, we want to do this, but we'd like to talk to you about where that best location is. And I don't know what they would say about that, but they may come back and say, you need to identify the specific lands, or they may come back and say, all right, you've got a certain time period to do that work, get it done, and then let's talk, so to speak. So that provides a bit of an overview of the process and what we anticipate may or may not happen. But if there's any questions of council, I'd be happy to do my best to try to answer those for you today.
Thank you, Jamie. Madam CAO.
Yeah, I was just as nice as it is to see Jamie all dressed up. I was going to suggest he turns his video off because their council's struggling to hear you.
Yeah.
So you might be clearer if you
hold it up. Yeah.
Is it breaking up? Sorry.
It is. It was breaking
That's
up.
better.
Kind of glitchy. Yeah.
Okay. Would you like him to do the whole presentation again or no?
I think we got it, but it was I could see you all struggling to hear.
Okay. I was as well. I should have said something. Sorry.
Yeah, if that happens again, Your Worship, please put up your hand or tell me.
It's doing it.
It's still doing it, Jamie.
Still doing it. You're echoing. You're in and out.
Let me try it with no mic. Is that better?
It is. I think that's better, Jamie. Yes. Okay. Deputy Mayor Cox, did you want to say anything, or just the fact that you couldn't hear him?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that too. Sorry. I had talked to Miss. Never mind. It's okay.
Okay, so Jamie, you didn't. Okay, I'll let Councillor Mennings go first. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. And through the chair to Mr. Robinson, thank you for that. I did read what you sent ahead, the information. It was very interesting, but just from my own clarity, I just wanted to ask a couple things. When you talk about in the package and in the letter, it talks about expansion potential for residential and also employment lands. Would the employment lands be what I've been referring to as industrial land, like lands that we might want to target or get approval so that we can bring in some higher paying jobs and some industry? Is that what we're being asked to identify also?
Through your worship,
Yes.
to the councillor, yes, that's correct. Employment lands is a fancy provincial term and planning term for lands that support jobs. So those industrial lands. Can you hear me better now without the?
It's better, but it's still a little raspy, Jamie. I'm not sure why.
Okay.
Maybe ask for some better internet service.
Sorry, through the chair, I have one supplemental. And then lands for residential use that we're able to consider for this exercise or request clarification through a response letter. Are they only the 2 settlement lands in Severn, West Shore and Coldwater, or are they any lands across the township?
Through your worship, it could be any lands that are abutting a settlement area. So in Severn Township, there's both service settlement areas, so Coldwater and West Shore, but also unserviced settlement areas as well. So
thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? Councillor Brennan.
Yes, thank you. I'll make no bones about it. Anything that skips process bothers me greatly. This almost smells like a baby MZO to me. How is it possible that we do a stage 1 analysis that says we don't need to expand our settlement boundaries on the one hand, and then we go along with adding, and God knows what the rules of the game would be in adding these areas with this current government? To me, it's just an opportunity for sprawl that excludes any kind of decision making based on our residents. It disturbs me greatly, and from what I've heard so far, I don't see any justification for it whatsoever. I think proper studies should be done, proper due process should be done, and I don't really care that the current government wants to create more sprawl. We already know just how badly their legislation is. That's it.
Deputy Mayor Cox.
Yeah, through the chair. I understand how you feel, but I believe that the letter that our staff put in at the very beginning, it says they are not comfortable identifying specific lands for boundary expansions until the proper work has been completed to determine the priorities. So I understand where you're coming from, but I also think that the staff have covered this, the compatibility, the stormwater management, the servicing, natural heritage reviews. And I think what I read into it is that our staff and Jamie, our consultants, have said, yes, here's our numbers, here's what we want, but we're not ready to tell you specific lands right now because we haven't done any of the studies. And I could be reading that wrong, Jamie, but I think that's where I see it coming from, is that we're here, but we want to talk to you if we want to do any more, because we need to be prepared and do it the right way once.
Through your worship, I think Ms. Cox, Deputy Mayor Cox, has summarized it quite accurately. And if I may, there's sort of 2 points I think that Councillor Brennan was raising. One related to the numbers or the supply, and is there enough land designated to support forecasted growth? And then the second was related to sort of the form of development and the style of development, and I think you used the word sprawl in there. So what this letter would do is open the door, is that the numbers that have been allocated through the first step of and first phase of the MCR process by the county, or their growth management exercise. What's clear in Severn Township is that the growth rates are exceeding what was allocated. So there's the relationship and the initial projections that were provided that those allocations and land supplies are based on in recent history in the township are proving to be not true, that the township would or has the ability or potential to run out of land because if development happens faster than what was anticipated. So it's basically an opportunity to take a second look at those numbers and are they okay? So that's sort of step one. And that's the one thing this would allow for if the door's open. The second thing, and the comment about the form of development and the sprawl, just 2 points on that. First, to Deputy Mayor Cox's comment, Yes, there would have to be a fulsome review and study, hydro-G studies to look at water implications, natural heritage studies to look at natural heritage implications. If agricultural lands are proposed for expansion, agricultural study of those lands, those sorts of things would all have to be done. Functional servicing studies, that information. So the studies would have to be done. And then secondly, from a policy perspective, the province through the growth plan and the provincial policy statement, the county through their official plan, and even the township through its official plan has some pretty important policies and strong policies about forms of development and densities of development to prevent sprawl and prevent that sort of historic notion of what that looks like. So the minimum density requirements that are included in both the county plan, your plan, and the growth plan are pretty substantial and help to ensure that development does proceed in an appropriate manner. So that's a bit of a different issue as the form of development than what this sort of request is. This is a very specific request related to opening the door.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Yes, through Mayor Burkett to Jamie. It's my understanding when it comes to things like MZOs, and this sure makes me feel uneasy about it, but that the province can override any requests to do substantive studies if they so want to. And what's to assure us that that won't happen in this case, number one? And secondly, we already have another challenge with regard to annexation in Severn Township, which will require some comprehensive analysis and detailed thinking as well at the end of the day. It's certainly based on the fact that I'm unaware that any annexation requests in the past have been denied by the province. So to me, I think we need to wait for some more careful studies. And so we get this, if we go this route, why not just go the normal route, do the studies, do it the way thoughtful planning people have done things for years, and we'll deal with that. If we're going to have a problem, let's deal with it the way we, the original planning system was designed, not through shortcuts.
Mr. Robinson.
Your worship to the councillor, just on the first point, MZOs are not a carte blanche. MZOs still need to meet the provincial policy statement, and they still need to meet the matters of provincial interest. And included in both of those documents, the matters of provincial interest in Section 2 of the Act, and then the provincial policy statement, there's a requirement under Section 2 of the Planning Act to have regard for natural features. And there's a whole host of matters of provincial interest in Section 2. Similarly, in the provincial policy statement, there's a requirement for protection of significant natural heritage features, and there's a whole list of those. So MZOs still have those tests that need to be met. So it's not just the province can step in and wipe that stuff away anywhere. So there still is a policy regime that has to be considered in those. It's just, it lets them jump forward through the municipal process effectively to that MZO. But yes, you certainly have the option, if this council wants to just sort of stay the course and follow the standard process. What this letter and this report is about is there is a unique opportunity here. That's presented itself, and whether or not the township wants to act on that, or at least open the door and see what's behind it, or if they just want to keep the door shut to begin with. So you really have two options: is open the door, see what's there. Do you have to go through it? Not necessarily. Or do you just keep the door shut right now? So certainly those two options are available.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Yes, supplementary through the mayor to Jamie. So you talked about the protection of natural heritage, but the natural heritage would be protected now under the new rules of wetland complexing, which basically we can't do wetland complexing. So they're not protected anyway under the current regime. I'd like to think that over time, sanity will prevail and we'll get back to actually protecting our wetlands and natural heritage. Right now, to me, the door is wide open. I understand in Halton and Peel, they're losing about 80 to 90% of what they've already protected under these new rules. So how on earth could we feel secure with anything else?
Through your worship, I think that's a different issue than what we're dealing with now, but that and I'll say that's not my understanding, that there are some requirements, and I'm not sure where you're getting that information from, but there still is a strong policy regime at the provincial level and at the county level and at the township level for the protection of wetlands. So, and it stems right from the significant wetlands that are identified in the provincial policy statement, and again, Section 2 of the Planning Act. So I'm not sure where you're getting that information. It doesn't seem accurate to me based on my knowledge as a professional planner and knowing the legislation and policy framework. But if something applying that in Severn Township, there is a number of policies that need to be met from an environmental perspective and natural heritage perspective before any development could proceed.
Thank you. Councillor Minnings.
Thank you through the chair to Mr. Robinson. So when you stated you recommend that we're interested in opening the door re-additional lands, is that a preliminary call to action to us to complete some of this study work or, fact finding, et cetera, to see, what we might consider in the future and might there be some money attached to it? I'd just like to know what happens or what the repercussions are if we say no versus what we're saying yes to. And if there's an opportunity for us to also start to do some of the work, which I think we need to do over the next 4 years, regardless, around growth and development, including industrial lands. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, through your worship to the councillor, there's a good chance that if the door gets open and the discussion is yes, we would like to work with you to identify more lands, then it would result in the need for the township to undertake some study, and there'd be some costs associated with that. So, and depending on the amount of time that was provided, that could provide some information about the depth and the breadth of the study that's undertaken and the associated costs. So it'd be premature for me to comment on what those might be or what that might look like right now, but you could anticipate that could be the case. But again, the door could be open. You don't have to necessarily go through it per se. So was there a second part to your question? Sorry.
Yeah, and if we said no, what are we saying no to as far as future growth and development, et cetera?
You're not saying no to, you're basically saying that you're comfortable with the settlement area boundaries that exist today, and you're comfortable with that planning process today, and that you're satisfied that you've got enough land in the municipality to support future growth, and it's not something you want to look at outside of that MCR process. So that's effectively what you'd be saying. The other thing I should have mentioned as well is that there was an ERO posting, which is the Environmental Registry of Ontario posting. So there are, to my knowledge, at least 3 landowners in the municipality that are making a request through that ERO posting, saying to the province, we'd like our lands included within the settlement areas of the township. There may be others, I'm not sure, but the public also has an opportunity through that ERO posting to provide responses and comments on this Bill 23 and OPA 7. However, in this case, the minister did send a specific letter to the township, and the minister's office actually followed up with a phone call a week or so ago, asking if the municipality was going to provide comments, which is, again, I think, a pretty unique situation.
Thank you. Any Deputy Mayor Cox?
Yeah, through the chair to Andrea. What we're talking about here with this letter and the fact that there was a phone call, I'm only referring back to you because you're a director of planning. If we do reply or don't reply, Jamie said, and open doors and closed doors, is this really do you really believe that this is that important that they are going to look at it? And I would also like you to comment on the developers, the fact that there are people in the background waiting to look, and why we can't designate specific lands that we thought might be good.
Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Mayor Burkett, through you to Deputy Mayor Cox. I think I'll start with your second question first. Okay. So as Mr. Robinson mentioned, this is on an ERO posting that anybody can comment on. It's open to the public as well. And certainly we are aware of some landowners in Severn making their own submissions based on their own justification. As we've discussed, the township hasn't undertaken the next step in terms of the studies in order to determine what lands might be the most appropriate. So it's premature at this point for the township to draw lines on a map per se, but that does not prevent individual landowners in Severn from making their own submissions directly on the ERO.
And supplemental to that, we really couldn't do that because it might show that we like listen to one another.
Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Mayor Burkett, through you to Deputy Mayor's follow-up question. So I think it would be dangerous for us to identify lines on a map at this point in time without having the appropriate studies completed. How do we justify, why we chose certain lands over another? What gave a property precedence over another? It's just too early for us to do that. However, what we're seeing, I think, to the first part of your question is that this ERO posting, including the follow-up call, is obviously something very significant to the province. And certainly, it doesn't hurt to open the door and see how far we want to go. And that would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor, to either Jamie or Andrea, further to Councillor Brennan, if we said yes to option 2, are we going to skip any studies along the way? And I agree with the councillor that we should, if we rush things, we get into trouble. Just a comment, what is this going to advance the process, and are we going to miss something along the way?
Through your worship to the councillor, it opens the door. It doesn't commit you to doing anything. But I would expect if you do want to look at opportunities for expansions, you will have to undertake some studies to provide that input and that justification on why one land or one piece of property over another property, for example, and what makes most sense for the township. So I'd expect you'd be into some studies.
Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Mayor Burkett. I just also wanted to add, I think the county is going through their budget process right now, and I believe they have also proposed some funds to be put forth to help lower tier municipalities such as Severn with some of those studies, because it falls under the principles of the MCR, or the Municipal Comprehensive Review process. So the mayor and deputy mayor may have seen some line items in terms of those type of funds being allocated at the county budget.
Okay, any further comments? Okay, now I want to throw a wrench into all this because I want to hear from both Jamie and Andrea. Now, no one has said, and I feel that option 2 isn't going to work for us, because if we don't say anything now, based on the amount of immigration that is going to happen within our province, and I don't agree with everything that the Premier's doing, but where do we house all these people? And it seems our area, and that's why our growth numbers are over the roof, is they're headed north. They're getting the dollars that they are getting in Toronto, and they're moving this way. Annexation. If we don't do anything, what Aurelia is looking at, and I'll give the new members of council a little bit of history because nothing was mentioned, Area 3. So Area 3 has been on the books for 20 some odd years, maybe 30. And we've given them extension after extension after extension. So it's the lands that are to the east of our township office. And they abut the lands that Aurelia is looking at developing in the wetlands down by Walmart. The only thing stopping development of those lands is the fact that we need to somehow come to an agreement with the city of Orillia to bring water and sewers across. Having said that, the lands that are down area 2 that are down at the corner of Division Road and Burnside have been approved, but in the last round, when the heritage mapping came out, they've been heritage protected. But they're also able to develop on those lands. So yes, we aren't prepared to provide a request, but what do we do with those 2 lands? If Orillia is looking at annexation, it would only make sense to me that they look at these lands right where our township office sits and annex these lands, because they're still looking to finish that agreement. If we don't say anything and we want those lands for ourselves, does that open the door for Orillia to have just cause to take those lands because they still haven't been developed and they're looking to use their water and sewers? So I would like to hear what both Andrea has to say, and as well as Jamie regarding what I've just spoken to. And I know that there's the EP lands, there's a golf course in between, and I know we have concerns with it, but on the same token, they're looking to develop them. And the one is within its right, waiting for a negotiation with Orillia. Jamie, you'd like to start it off, just for the benefit of council, because there's a lot of stuff here. This is an important document, I feel. If we sit here and do absolutely nothing, and I understand what you're saying, that, you know, let's open the door, but open the door to what? If we don't tell the province what we're looking for, someone's going to look down there at the province and say, listen, you've had this Area 3 on the books for 30 years, and still nothing has happened. It sits there stagnant based on the growth numbers and what's going to happen. And now that there's a new owner and they want to move forward, the province is going to look at it. And if I forget who's Hempson's doing the consulting for Orillia, and they put this area in their request, the province I feel, is going to say, let's just take it. That's what I feel. I may be wrong. I don't know, but I'm happy to have this discussion. I feel there's merit for all of us to at least understand what may or may not happen.
So I'll kick it off, I think, because you directed it to me, Your Worship. But I don't have a crystal ball, but I would suspect that, so where we're sitting is the province has provided this letter saying, is there anywhere you want to grow? That I would suspect if the township sent a response that said, yes, we'd like to consider options, but we have to confirm where those are, I think the provinces can do 2 things. They can say, we need to know this instant, I don't think they're just going to shut the door on you and say, you didn't provide us with the exact location, so you're out. I think they're going to say, we need to know right now where those locations are. Or they're going to say, all right, we'll give you X time period to figure that out. So I think, in my opinion, I think it's appropriate to open the door and to say, yes, we'd like those, we'd like some consideration for additional lands. It's just really difficult for me as a planner, and I'm sure Andrea's staff, to say, here's the lands it should go, here's the lands we should expand to in comparison to another parcel of land, without the justification or without any planning rationale. It's tough for us. We don't really have anything to hang our hat on, so to speak, with respect to that. So I also don't think, so A, we don't have any justification to hang our hat on, but B, I don't think the door's getting slammed shut and this is the only opportunity at this instant. I think that this province needs willing partners to meet those requirements and meet those housing targets. And if you've identified you'd like to be a willing partner or participant, I don't think they're going to stop discussion with you. But again, I don't have a crystal ball.
So Jamie, just to the part, sorry, Andrea, just to the part about annexation and Orillia, because Area 3 has been on the books for so long, and they already have approval. They have approval to build, and we're not going to submit something, with concerns that this may be an area that we want to look at. We're just going to wait for the province and say to them that, yes, we want to expand our settlement areas. And the only places that we can expand is West Shore or Coldwater, because Washego's stifled. It's on a lagoon, so it cannot grow anymore. So we're looking at two areas. And to grow West Shore, you've got to come across the highway. There's no, unless you move towards Aurelia again. You work towards, we changed the name of the road, Woods Bay Road. I can't say the other road. If we go towards that section, otherwise we're coming across the highway and we're going to take farmland for growth. In Coldwater, there are some lands that we can use, but I think there's farmland as well. So that's my concern is Area 3 has been approved. Area 2 has been approved, but it has heritage mapping over it. With annexation, how does this, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but how does this play into the fact when Hampson looks at Aurelia and where they should grow, does that give them a place to grow if we do not comment at this point?
Your worship, I don't think so. So a couple things. Annexation, is it a threat or to the municipality? Certainly it is. Is it an immediate threat? I don't think so. The city's still undertaking an exercise. They're basically back at the drawing board by City of Aurelia, to see if they can intensify and grow within their built boundary more. That's sort of the direction that the path they're going right now. So that whole annexation process is a substantial process, and it's one that takes time. To your point, though, I think where you're getting at is, are we positioning ourselves better to thwart off annexation if we consider these Area 3 lands and potentially south of Division Road secondary plan lands as part of a settlement area? Does that help put up a boundary for us or limit that? Correct. And it may, but I think it may and it may not. But I think there's a process here, and identifying those lands today as, yes, we want to, like, making that decision at this council meeting that these are the lands we want included in a settlement area, or these are the lands we want a settlement area expansion. I don't think, like, I'm not in a position to make that recommendation to you, and I'm not sure you folks as councillors would be necessarily in a position to make that decision with the justification. But what I can tell you, and what is what's an existing fact, is that those Area 3 lands and the south of Division Road secondary plan have elevated status over other lands. They've had a secondary plan on the books for years and years and years. So they do have a unique planning context associated with those lands. So those could be lands if the township opens the door now, and if there's consideration about expansion of settlement area, I would expect those would be lands that are in the mix of, are these lands that we should expand the Marchmont Bass Lake settlement area to include those lands. So, but yeah, I think it would be a discussion, and it would be some of the lands that are in the mix. But I don't think time is of the essence specifically today. I think it's something that should be looked at comprehensively with everything else in the township.
Okay, thanks. So just based on the deadline, we're just going to, in option 2, to let the province know that we want to talk. And I think that's all staff is looking for, as well as you.
Correct.
Okay, correct. Thank you. Yes. Councillor Minis, did you want to say something?
Yeah, it's an awesome discussion. And I guess my comment would be that when we talk about settlement areas, so we've got West Shore and Coldwater currently, but they're serviced settlement areas as the definition came forward earlier in the conversation, but there are also other unserviced settlement areas. So we're not just limited to West Shore and Coldwater. I agree with West Shore, the high density that's happening here already with the developments that are approved and ongoing. So the township is much bigger than that, as we know. I'm also really interested in opening the door to the whole industrial or employment lands discussion. And I think by saying yes to our interest in that, that would be a responsible thing to do based on what we're wanting to see brought into the township. I agree with your comments around the Aurelia annexation potential for that, but at the same time, that's out of our hands. And I'm concerned that not responding is a response, and providing a no, we're not interested in talking is also a response, and we may be left out of any decisions that affect us by that. So I'm all for continuing the discussion.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Through the chair, I would like to hear Andrea's answer to your comment.
Thank you, Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Mayor Burkett, through you. So I think council's certainly aware over the last 5 years, planning has been changing constantly and we're trying to keep up. And I think our philosophy here with staff and Jamie is you just kind of have to come to the table each day and deal with the best information that you have. So for example, Jamie helped us with the official plan. If we had waited until, the county had finished phase 2 of the MCR before we made a final decision on the official plan, probably something in the interim new would have come up, causing us to delay again. So I think you just have to come to the table each day and deal with the information, the best available information you have, and you kind of have to pivot and adjust to what's happening. And I think, as long as we say, hey, we're interested, let's keep the door open. We're just going to have to take it day by day and deal with the information we have on each day and adjust as necessary. It's a changing world out there. It's, again, like Jamie said, you can't have a crystal ball. There's just too much change. And so that would be my suggestion, is that we just have to be open to pivoting and adjusting and go with option 2.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, through your worship, to Andrea, I think. Okay, so just a couple of things. The annexation issue does involve us. We do have a say, as does the province, as does Oro Township, as does Aurelia. And also they're in the middle of an intensification study that should change or eliminate the need for settlement expansion, which will be coming forward soon too. So this is a bit premature based on that, for starters. So also, in the areas that we're talking about developing, there are significant natural heritage features like Silver Creek that need to be considered carefully before anybody goes plowing the whole place under and putting concrete on it. And like our secondary plan area here that we're talking about, we identify it as an area that's sensitive in our plan. And now suddenly, it's all developed. Like, this makes absolutely no sense to me that we would rush any decision on those areas. And the employment land discussion is a completely different discussion from the settlement expansion. It's not the same discussion. It just seems to me, why hurry? And let's face it, the housing forecasts are questionable at best to begin with. So I don't know why we're rushing when we can do more careful planning under a more carefully budgeted scenario. That's sort of where I keep landing on this.
Deputy Mayor Cox.
Councillor Jansen, he can go because I've already.
Go ahead, Councillor Jansen. Sorry.
Thank you, and through the chair, I believe it is a good idea to be keeping the door open and talking to the province. I'd like to know, though, if we are deciding, after, I guess we do these studies that need to be done or that are required to be done, if we are looking at expansion of any settlement areas, serviced or unserviced, as well as employment lands, will those decisions come back to council first before being provided to the province?
Your worship, yes, it would be a council decision on whether or not to undertake such studies, and the results of them would all be reviewed with council, certainly.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you. I guess where I'm coming from is I agree that we should open the door. And I also know that we're looking at doing a master service plan anyway. We're also looking at our water and sewage expansions. And I think this just opens the door, as everyone has said. I don't think it means we have to take action within any period of time, because no offense, we could send this letter and who knows what'll happen. As Andrea said, 2 months from now, they could decide that they've changed their mind on this and are going to do something else. So if we open the door, we've explained how we want to be careful about it. We have said we don't want to start naming lands and putting one landowner ahead of another as a preference. I think that we've opened the door gently and said we are interested, but we're cautious also. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Okay. Do we have, thank you very much. Oh, Madam CEO, you wanted to say something.
Oh, Your Worship, you can finish the vote, and then I'll, it's unrelated to the specific vote.
Okay, Jamie,
finish that,
could you stay on though, please,
yeah.
Jamie? Don't go anywhere. Madam Clerk, do you have a motion?
Certainly. So the motion reads that planning report number P23-004 dated February 1st, 2023, with respect to a letter dated December 12th, 2022 from Minister Clark regarding adopted County of Simcoe official plan amendment number 7, phase 1 of municipal comprehensive review MCR be received, and further that in accordance with option 2 as set out in attachment 1 to planning report P23-004, staff and MHBC be directed to provide a response to the Associated Environmental Registry of Ontario ERO posting 019-6113 by submitting a copy of the report and associated attachments, and further that a copy of the township's ERO submission be forwarded to the County of Simcoe.
Thank you. Mover and a seconder, please. Or is there any further discussion? Moved by Councillor Minnings, second by Deputy Mayor Cox. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Madam CAO. Jamie, oh, there you are there. Okay.
Through your worship, my apologies. When we started, we should have introduced Jamie for the benefit of our new councillors who may not have seen him before or wondered how he got to the table. So Jamie is a partner in MHBC planning. And I want to say 3 years ago now, we RFP'd for our official plan and hired Jamie and his firm. Throughout that time, planning got considerably more busy all the time, and it's very hard to keep up with all of the new subdivisions demands. So at the time, council gave us permission to put some consulting dollars aside, and when we need some extra help for things that are not kind of day-to-day, then we bring Jamie in and he helps us. So we've kind of treated him like staff, but we haven't introduced him to the new members as such. So Jamie has a wealth of knowledge of the local municipalities. He works with lots of our neighbors, but he's actually a Severn resident raising his family in Marchmont, so he knows us very well. So.
Thank you, Laurie, and just to add to it, and because of that, he gives Severn a huge discount. Thank you, Jamie. Okay, moving on.
Ms. Kennard's a good negotiator.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Have a good day.
All right. Take care. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye-bye. So I think we're moving on to new business or no announcements. Do we have any announcements? No. Closed session. We have none. Confirmation bylaw.
Oh, no, Your Worship, we skipped the bylaws.
Oh, I'm sorry. I went down too far. You're right. Sorry.
There's only a few of them. There's only a few of them. For Councillor Taylor's benefit, I will pull bylaws number 2023-07 and 2023-09, and we'll deal with them by separate motion because he's declared a conflict on them. So we'll have two motions to do the bylaws today.
I have a conflict. Is the Lions Club in any one of these or the Legion? Okay, perfect. No. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Okay, so the motion reads that bylaw numbers 2023-02 to 2022-06, 2023-08, and 2023-010 through 2023-13 inclusive being are hereby read a first, second, third time and finally passed.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Taylor, second by who would like? Deputy Mayor Cox. All in favor? That is carried. Madam Clerk.
And the next one is the motion for the ones that member or Councillor Taylor declared the conflict on. So it's the bylaws number 2023-07 and 2023-09 being are hereby read a first, second, third time and finally passed.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Jansen. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move now to no announcement, no closed session, confirmation by, oh, Deputy Mayor Cox, go ahead.
I just had a quick question through the chair to Allison. Did we already approve the budget?
Yep. The bylaw will come forward in.
That's what I want to find out.
A month or so when once the director of finance has all the rates from all the various.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
But yes, council has passed the motion to adopt the budget.
Any other comments?
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Councillor Mennings, are you okay, or do you want to say anything? Because I can't see you.
Sorry. Yes. No, I'm okay.
Right,
I've been using the thumbs up or thumbs down. So.
Okay. Somebody's got a hand on the screen. I don't know whose it is. No closed session, confirmation bylaw, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Motion reads that the bylaw number 2023-14 be and is hereby read a first, second, third time and finally passed.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Jansen. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Oh, we have adjournment.
Yeah. That this meeting be and is hereby now adjourned at 10:21 a.m.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Jansen, second by, what do you want? Councillor Brennan. Thank you. All in favor? That is